So good day everyone. I'm here to give my take in the issues of fake news in the Philippines with the study of Cabañas and Santiago in consuming digital disinformation. How Filipinos engage with racist and historically distorted online political content. So let's get started. So first let's go. Before we get started, um, I would like to give a quick overview about the study. San Cabañas and Santiago study talks about talks about how social media users would twist political stories on the country by their bias claims interpretation towards certain sources, and they would only favor the sources they want in specific social media platforms and they use, which is Facebook and Twitter. First, let's go to the anthropological perspective on my take. So the first one is the anthropological perspective, imaginaries and class vulnerability. Anthropologically, this study shifts the focus from technology and algorithms to the culture or people. It argues that disinformation works not because people are stupid, but because it taps into deep-seated cultural narratives called shared imaginaries. First, no, the subject precarious middle class. The study identifies a specific tribe that is most vulnerable, the precarious middle class. The demographics of this group of people is they make up 37 of the population of Manila, uh, earning between 15,780 and pesos and 78,900 monthly. The anthropological attention that they are in a state of limbo. Their aspirations. They consume symbols of the good life like Starbucks and float trips to Singapore and cities. They do not live in gated communities and are exposed to crime, traffic, and corruption. Now, why this matters? Their fragility makes them yearn for a strong man leader who will impose discipline, making them willing to accept authoritarian narratives like martial law was good if it promised stability. Now, next is social memory and the golden age myth. The study treats history not as a set of facts but as a social memory, a shared story that defines a group's identity. First is the myth. Disinformation producers repackaged the martial law era 1970s not as a time of abuse but as a golden age of discipline and order. The ritual of investigation. Even when participants like Luz or Ginelin admitted that freedoms were curtailed, they justify it as a necessary discipline for the undisciplined masses. This reveals a cultural desire for strict printing applied to the state. This is the digital rituals. Platform jumping. The study documents specific digital behaviors that function like social rituals. First is the sanitization rituals. Users engage in social media diet curation, actively avoiding toxic political news to protect their mental peace. Next is platform segregation. Users practice platform jumping to manage relationships. Facebook is for family and maintaining social harmony, avoid conflict. And Twitter and X is the safe place for venting political anger because relatives aren't there. The linguistic Next is the linguistic perspective, semantics, framing, and authority. Linguistically, the study highlights how language is used to reframe reality and shift authority from institutions to individuals. First, and semantic shift, relabeling reality. Disinformation campaigns succeed by altering the semantics meaning of historical terms to fit current emotions. Example is the oligarch versus social bandit. Duterte is logistically framed as a social bandit, a Robin Hood figure who saved people from the oligarchs. Now, next is bias. The word bias has been weaponized to legitimize standard journalism. Participants labeled mainstream media such as ABCBN and Rappler as biased not because of factual errors, but because they are perceived as elitist. Next is the pragmatics of authenticity. The study reveals a shift in who is allowed to speak the truth, such as vloggers as truth tellers. Participants explicitly stated they prefer vloggers over journalists because vloggers speak directly from source. Linguistic style. Vloggers use colloquial, emotional, and punchy language that mimics the way ordinary people speak, whereas journalists use formal, framed language that feel distant. The unpolished language of the blogger is linguistically interpreted as honest, while the polished language of the news anchor is interpreted as manufactured. Next is the language of othering, xenophobia. The study analyzes how racist discourse is constructed against the Chinese individuals versus the slurs and labels. Participants use terms like ching chong and engage in narratives that dehumanize Chinese nationals. Hyperbole. This information uses exaggerated quantities such as claiming 90% of Chinese are legal to create a sense of invasion. Next is the province of China metaphor. A specific linguistic trope where citizens feared the Philippines was becoming a literal province of China following nationalist anxiety. So the summary of this study followed. In the golden age fake news, the the anthropological view of it is a form of social memory used to cope with present-day economic anxiety. The linguistic form, a semantic shift where martial law is redefined as peace rather than dictatorship. Next one is the social media use. A platform, the, the anthropological view of this is platform jumping act as a social safety valve to preserve family harmony, and the linguistic view of this is code switching between family, fa- Facebook language, and political Twitter language. Third feature is trust. So trust is placed in strong men who promise to fix the undisciplined, and trust is placed in vloggers whose vernacular language signals authenticity over elitist news. So, so to conclude, and my recommendation in in this in this discussion of fake news, the authors conclude that the battle against disinformation cannot be won solely by fact-checking or platform bans, as these do not address the demand for such content. Key findings: vulnerability lies in imaginaries. Disinformation works because it validates the deep stories people want to believe. Example, that discipline will save the nation. Second, fact-checking backfires. Labeling content as fake or false is often seen as an elitist attack on the people's intelligence, or their preferred narrative. Recommendations for counter disinformation. Creative interventions. Instead of dry fact checks, campaigners should use storytelling, drama, and comedy. Historical facts should be woven into engaging narratives, such as narrative, animated series, digital games, and dramas that compete with the entertainment value of this information. Second is programmatic funding. Counter disinformation efforts must stop being ad hoc or temporary projects. Funders need to support long term, sustained initiatives that slowly rebuild shared imaginaries and offer democratic alternatives to the strong man narrative. Third is the reframing narratives. The goal is to create a common reality that is less divisive, moving away from us versus them narratives and toward shared Filipino values and struggles. So, as we conclude, my take in issues in fake news that we must do our best to not make biased interpretation in this kind of political issues. Here's the reference. Thank you.